Hi, in today's video, I want to talk a little bit more about the concept of pulling when we walk instead of pushing. I believe that the misconception between pushing and pulling is responsible for a lot of the problems that people have when they walk. At the end of this video, I'm going to give you an exercise that I guarantee is going to help you understand the difference between pulling and pushing, which sometimes can be hard for people to distinguish between. After you practice the exercise that I'm going to give you at the end of the video, please leave a comment and let me know if that helped clarify in your mind what the difference is between pulling with the muscles in the front and pushing with the muscles in the back. Now, before we get started, if you haven't bought your copy of the Walking Code Ebook, go ahead and click on the link above. And also make sure to click the like button, share the video, and subscribe to the channel if you're not already a subscriber. Now let's go ahead and get started. When I talk about pushing versus pulling when we walk, we're essentially talking about whether we're using the muscles in our back, in the back of the butt, which is the gluteus maximus muscle, versus the muscles in the front or the hip flexors. So when we push, we're using the muscles in the back to push off the ground and push the body forward. And you can see when I do that, what happens. We essentially have sort of a lunging sort of action versus what we do when we walk properly is use the muscles in the front to pull the body forward. And in this video, I'm going to go through some examples of when we are pulling and when we are pushing and show you the difference between the two. There's a lot of people out there that say we are pushing and using the glutes, and they ask you to feel your glutes when you walk, make sure that your glutes are activated or firing when you walk. But what does that really mean? If I'm going to fire my glutes, that means I'm extending my hip and back of the body to walk. And that's the result of that sort of action. So what I am asking you to understand is that during that swing portion of gait, where the rear leg leaves the ground, we're not pushing off of anything. I'm not pushing with my back hip, and I'm not pushing with my front hip. What I'm doing is using the muscles in the front of the hip to pull the body forward, like a lever. If you can see the angle between my upper leg and my knee and my torso, you can see that it is angled backward. And what we're going to use is the muscles in front of the hip to tilt the pelvis forward at the hip joint in this sort of manner. We're using our lower abdominal muscles to tuck the pelvis at the same time, and that's what results in the smooth gliding action of a normal controlled walk. Let's start the demonstration from the position where we are forward on the standing leg and the rear leg toes are touching the ground just before we initiate the swing through portion of the gait. This is where people often think they have to push off to get the body to move forward. And let me demonstrate why that thinking is incorrect and why we're not pushing off, we are pulling. From this position, my center of gravity is behind my standing leg or my standing foot. If I were to push or extend using my glutes on the left, that's what's going to happen. I'm going to push myself back. I also can't push off with the back leg because the back leg has gotten me to this point. At this point, the back leg needs to leave the ground, moving forward. It can't simultaneously be pushing back and moving forward at the same time. So what's really happening? What we're doing at this point is using the hip flexors to pull the body forward like this, while at the same time using the lower abs to tuck the pelvis under and help the body glide forward. The lower abs are not only tucking the pelvis, but they're also going to be rotating the pelvis. When I'm using my lower abs on the left, they're going to be tucking the pelvis on the left and rotating the pelvis around to the left side, contributing to the forward swing of the body, while I use my upper abdominal muscles to keep the body facing forward. That's the gliding action of a pull. When we push, or when people think they need to push, this is what happens. From this position, if I extend my left hip to push, what's going to happen, as I already mentioned, is I'm going to push myself back. If I extend the back hip, what's going to happen is I'm just going to push myself up like this. So what people do in order to move forward with a push is they actually lean the body forward. Now I can push and I get that sort of action. I end up pitching forward and crashing into the heel, which we all know is a bad thing. A lot of people believe that we should not be landing on the heel because people get heel pain and leg pain because of heel landing. That's because of people walking like this. That's not because of people walking normally like this. There's no impact when you walk normally by pulling the body forward. Now, let's be clear, there are times where we use the glutes. The glutes are very powerful muscles, and I'm going to explain to you when and where we are using the glutes. Let's demonstrate with these stairs. When I place my right foot on a stair, I'm first going to get this balanced position, and then I'm going to push the body forward using the glutes. So now I am using my glutes on the left. I'm going to then change weight, shift forward, and now I'm going to push up using the glutes on the right. So my glutes are being used right now. I'm then going to tuck my pelvis under to place the foot, and I'm still using my glutes on the right as I shift forward. And then now I'm going to use my glutes on the left to push, push, push. Pay attention, because I'm pushing up with the glutes. I'm now in a full standing position while fully engaging my glutes. So how do I then walk forward? I can't engage my glutes. They're already fully engaged. What I need to do is engage the muscles in the front of the hip to now pull forward. And then that's how we walk forward with a normal gait. So we can't simultaneously be using the glutes to push up at the top of the stair and then to move forward. We're using two opposite groups of muscles when we transition from the push up to the lift forward or pull forward. So there we can see the difference between using the glutes in the back or using the hip flexors in the front. Now let me show you an exercise that's going to really help solidify your mind-body connection as it refers to pulling versus pushing. What I want you to do is stand with one foot turned out to the right and one foot forward. This is going to be a 90-degree difference in angle between the 2 feet. And I want you to practice shifting the weight between the 2 legs. And we're going to keep the center of our gaze in between at 45 degrees, split between the 2 feet. When I shift back and forth, what I'm doing is pulling forward with my left hip. That means I'm lifting my left knee forward. I'm not pushing. That's what would be a push with my left hip. I'm pulling the left knee forward as I'm changing weight. And now I'm going to pull with my right hip as I change back. Essentially, I'm doing the same motion with the hip, but I'm lifting my right hip up. That's what I'm really trying to do. I'm lifting the right hip as I change my weight with the abdominal muscles back to the left. So I'm shifting back and forth. In both situations, I'm using hip flexion. Flexion of my right hip, flexion of my left hip. Essentially, the hip is sinking in here, sinking in here. And I'm using the upper abdominal muscles to keep the rotation of the body. I'm keeping the lower abdominal muscles engaged to root the leg. So I'm engaged on the left with the lower abdominal muscles rooting the left leg. Now I'm engaged on the right to root the right leg. So lower abdominal muscles are going to the left and then to the right, to the left and then to the right. Upper abdominal muscles going to the right and to the left, to the right and to the left. Hip flexing on the right, flexing on the left, flexing on the right, flexing on the left. And when we get to this position, now what we're going to do is take a step. My right foot is facing forward in this direction. My body is facing at a 45-degree angle relative to my foot. At this point, if I were to try to engage my glutes to push, all I would be able to do is push myself back like this or push myself back like this. But what you're going to do is get to this position and now pull yourself into a normal step. This is going to make it really clear to you, or it should, what the difference between that push and the pull is. You'll really be able to feel it. From this position, with your body facing at a 45-degree angle relative to your foot, pull yourself into a forward walk in the direction of the right foot, if your right foot is over here. I'm going to use my hip flexors to pull the body. And what you're going to see is it's going to not only pull the body forward, it also is going to rotate the body, because the hip flexion has a pulling action that's going to pull the body towards that hip. When I flex the right hip, it's pulling the body to the right. It does that when I swing through, just like it does in that motion. It's going to pull the body to the right as I take the step. When we walk normally, that pulling action is going to be pulling the body towards the left if I'm swinging through with my right leg, and that keeps the body in a straight line. If I'm trying to turn to the left, what we do is change weight, turning the upper body to the left, and then now when I engage my hip flexors on the left to step, it's going to pull, they are going to pull me around to the left. That's how we turn when we're stepping. We're using the rotational energy not only of the abdominal muscles, but also the rotational energy caused by the hip flexion. The hip flexion pulls the body towards that side that it's active on. You see that very distinctly here, as the hip on the right is going to pull the body around to the right once I engage it to begin the swing through portion of the step. Up until the point where the swing through begins, I'm using my left hip to pull the body forward, just like we did when we were shifting back and forth. My left hip is pulling forward, not pushing, that's pushing. Left hip is pulling forward. Now the right hip is pulling forward. If you practice that exercise, you're going to be able to see and feel the difference between pulling and pushing. You won't be able to push, because even leaning forward is not going to help you in this position, because leaning forward would be that motion here. It wouldn't help you take a step. So if you're able to take that step going this way, that means you know that you're pulling correctly, and you can use that feeling to add to your normal forward walking gait, and it's going to really help you to move better. I hope you liked the video. If you did, make sure you've already clicked that like button, share the video, and subscribe to the channel, and look forward to my future videos. Make sure to watch all the other videos on the channel, because each one is giving different tips or similar tips in a different way of presentation that's going to help with your walking technique. Thanks for watching.